On a quiet Tuesday evening, Romano's Italian restaurant glowed softly beneath warm amber lights, tucked away on a narrow street in downtown Chicago. The dinner rush had passed, leaving behind a low-murmur conversation, the clink of silverware, and the gentle hum of old jazz playing from hidden speakers. Emma Martinez moved through the dining room like a shadow, efficient, graceful, practiced. At 25, she balanced 3 plates on one arm while pouring coffee with the other, her worn apron bearing the faint stains of long shifts and longer days. She had worked at Romano's for 2 years, saving every spare dollar, surviving rather than living. Her violin case sat unopened in her tiny apartment, collecting dust beside unpaid bills and broken dreams. Once, she had played at Carnegie Hall. Now, she refilled water glasses. Emma had mastered the art of being invisible. Wealthy patrons rarely noticed her beyond a polite nod or distracted "thank you." They talked business, numbers, acquisitions, worlds far removed from her own quiet grief. Sometimes, as she walked, her fingers moved unconsciously against the edge of her tray, tracing notes only she could hear. Muscle memory was cruel like that. It never forgot. At table 12 sat Alexander Stone, 36, tech billionaire, one of Chicago's most talked-about innovators. He wore success effortlessly. Tailored suit, understated watch catching the candlelight, confidence sharpened by years of winning. He was deep in conversation with his business partner, Marcus, discussing their latest acquisition. "The numbers don't lie," Alexander said calmly. 30% growth in the first quarter alone. Emma approached their table, voice soft. "More wine." "Please," Marcus replied, barely looking up. His phone buzzed, and his face shifted instantly. "Alex, I hate to do this, but Sarah's in labor. The baby's coming early." Alexander's expression changed. "Go. Congratulations. We'll finish tomorrow." Marcus hurried out, leaving Alexander alone at the table. For just a moment, the armor slipped. His shoulders sagged slightly, and Emma noticed something familiar in his posture. Loneliness. She'd seen it often. People with everything except someone to share it with. "Would you like me to box up your dinner?" she asked gently. Alexander looked up, really looked at her for the first time that evening. Her eyes held something deeper than exhaustion, something lived in. "No," he said after a pause. "I think I'll stay. It's not like there's anyone waiting for me at home." Emma felt a quiet ache of recognition. "Sometimes being alone isn't the worst thing," she said before she could stop herself. He smiled. "You might be right. Still, eating alone always makes me feel like everyone's watching." "They're not," Emma replied. "Most people are too busy with their own stories." Something in her voice caught his attention. Wisdom, quiet strength, unexpected. As she cleared the extra place setting, Alexander watched her hands. Graceful, careful, almost reverent. "You know," he said suddenly, "you don't seem like someone meant to be invisible." Her hands stilled. For a flicker of a second, something crossed her face. Surprise, pain, maybe hope, but it vanished behind a professional smile. "We all have roles to play," she said softly, then walked away. Alexander watched her go, unsettled by the feeling that he'd missed something important. The evening wore on. The restaurant thinned. Emma refilled Alexander's coffee twice and brought him a slice of tiramisu he hadn't ordered. "On the house," she said. Solo diner policy. "You don't have to pity me," he joked. "I'm not," she replied. "I just know what it's like." Later, she overheard him on a call, his voice tight with frustration. When he hung up, she approached quietly. "Rough day?" she asked. He laughed without humor. "Rough year. Sometimes I wonder if any of it's worth it." Emma paused. "My parents died when I was young," he continued. "I built everything from nothing. Somewhere along the way, I forgot to build a life." He looked at her. "What about you? Family? Dreams?" The word hit her like a blow. "I had dreams once," she said quietly. "What kind?" Her fingers brushed a small violin pendant hidden beneath her uniform. "Music. You're a musician. I was. What happened?" She hesitated, then whispered, "My parents died in a car accident 3 years ago. They left me with debt, and my violin. I had to choose between music and survival. The silence between them was heavy. "I'm sorry," Alexander said sincerely. She nodded, turning away, but his voice stopped her. "What if you didn't have to choose?" He gestured toward the old violin mounted on the wall. "Play something. For a tip, a big one." Emma laughed shakily. "That's just decoration." "Then what's the worst that could happen?" Her world tilted. "I haven't played in 3 years," she whispered. "What if I fail?" "Impossible," he said with quiet certainty. The restaurant was nearly empty now. Emma took a breath. She reached for the violin. And everything changed. Emma's hands trembled as she lifted the violin from the wall. Dust clung to varnished wood, and the strings hummed faintly as if disturbed after a long sleep. For years, she had trained herself not to look at that violin, not to think about what it represented. Dreams had a way of hurting when you touched them too closely. "I can't," she whispered again, shaking her head. "I'm not who I used to be." Alexander stood, his voice gentle but steady. "Sometimes we're exactly who we need to be. We just forget." With careful respect, he handed her the instrument. It was real. Old, neglected, but real. Emma's breath caught. "Mr. Romano said it belonged to his grandmother," she murmured. She played back in Italy. "Then maybe it's been waiting," Alexander said softly, "for the right hands." Emma's fingers hovered over the strings. Fear battling hope. What if she disappointed him? What if the music was gone? The restaurant fell quiet as she tuned the violin, each adjustment awakening something dormant inside her. Her posture shifted. Her shoulders straightened. Her chin lifted. For the first time that night, she didn't look like a waitress. She looked like a musician. "I used to play classical," she said nervously. "Conservatory training." "Play what your heart remembers," Alexander replied. Emma closed her eyes. The first note wavered, fragile and uncertain. Then her fingers found their places, and the violin began to sing. Box air on the G string flowed through the room. Not polished, not perfect, but raw with truth. The music carried grief, sacrifice, and longing. It carried the weight of nights spent choosing rent over lessons, survival over passion. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she played, but she didn't stop. 3 years of silence poured out in sound. Alexander sat frozen. He had attended symphonies and galas, heard world-class performers in grand halls. But this was different. This wasn't performance. This was a soul speaking. When the final note faded, the silence felt sacred. "My God," Alexander whispered. "Who are you?" Emma lowered the violin, breath shaking. "Nobody. Just—" "No," he said, standing abruptly. "Nobody doesn't play like that." Soft applause filled the room. Mr. Romano emerged from the kitchen, eyes shining. "My Nona would have loved that," he said. "She always said her violin would wake again." Emma carefully set the violin down, overwhelmed. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I needed that." She turned to leave, but Alexander stopped her. "You can't go back to serving coffee like nothing happened." She smiled sadly. "Dreams are expensive, Mr. Stone." Alexander pulled out his phone. "What if they weren't?" She covered his hand. "Please don't give me hope. Hope is what broke me before." He looked at her and understood. "What if this isn't hope?" he said softly. "What if it's what you deserve?" His phone rang. He stepped away, answering quickly. Emma sank into a chair, emotionally drained but lighter than she'd felt in years. Moments later, Alexander returned, eyes bright. "Margaretchen wants to meet you," he said. Emma stared. "The Chicago Symphony Margaretchen? I sent her a recording. She listened just now." He smiled. "Full scholarship, living stipend, emerging artist program." The words barely felt real. "Why?" Emma whispered. "Because you reminded me why success matters," Alexander replied. "It's not what you build, it's what you protect." Mr. Romano pressed a violin case into Emma's hands. "It's yours," he said. "My Nona's violin found its home." 6 months later, Emma stood on stage with the Chicago Symphony. Her debut solo filled the hall. In the front row, Alexander watched with tears in his eyes as she dedicated performance to the stranger who believed when I forgot how. Sometimes all it takes is one moment of kindness. And sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most unexpected places. Violin